In the short time I've been alive, I've lived through more than I expected to. I'm not proud of this, it simply is, and I often don't know how to continue in the aftermath of my upbringing. It feels as though I've already passed through a veil, lived longer than I was meant to, like a prophet who must learn to live in the world past his time. Everything I once imagined or predicted for my future, before the great rift in my life, has tumbled down the cracks. That is not to say that I don't have dreams for myself anymore, but they're all very different now. The dreams of someone else, not a little boy or a reckless, self-confident drunkard, but a broken man, drifting on the surface of reality. My nerves are raw, and my heart is butterflied wide open, so that even the softest touch of hope hurts. I see my future not in actions, but in abstractions, ones that I often can't parse any part of, but the persistent droning of truth that flows through me like liquid fire in their presence, that evades my flailing attempts to capture it with words, and can abruptly and inexplicably bring me to my knees, call forth tears from my unwilling eyes. I am not inherently religious, but I do believe in truth as something greater than a body of scientific knowledge, as something you can feel and know on faith alone. And I believe this truth is baked into reality, as natural as life and death, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Endings tend to come in one of two varieties: things falling apart, or things falling into place. But sometimes all of the pieces have to fall apart, to be broken down into their fundamental building blocks, permanently changed, before they can reassemble into their truest form. To replace the hull of a ship will change its composition forever. But if the hull has grown mottled through with woodworm and rot, then this change is a prerequisite for it to fulfill its purpose of sailing uninhibited, for it to be a ship. Or the hull could be left to rot, to become silt that will feed bacteria and invertebrates, eventually making its way back up the river in the body of a salmon that will rot on the bank, returning to the forest to fertilize another stand of saplings, to be cut and hewn again into planks, to sail once more. Life imitates art. If this matter was truly meant to be a ship, it will find a way home. Or the body of that salmon will create rich, fertile soil, grass for deer to graze upon, or farmland that will feed a family. Change and transformation are not inherently bad. We are only averse to them because we like to view ourselves as stalwart and unchanging creatures, when perhaps our greatest strength is our capacity to be reborn in the fires of life, to be ground down, slaked, formed, and fired into a new vessel. I imagine the mountains of the utter east, sheer peaks whose true nature only becomes clear once you've crossed the point of no return, where the water rises to meet the sky, and all things come to an end. Only, the finality of this end is not the pain of destruction, but rather everyone and everything coming to its proper resting place. Matter settling into its final state, Souls realized in actualization, becoming who they were meant to be, free from the pain and doubt, the evil that is lurking ever present around the edges of the human mind. I see a man casting off his soft skin for hard scales and a belly full of fire. What does it take to become a dragon? Not wholly literally, but mentally and metaphorically. I've encountered this question countless times in the last handful of years. I've written tens of pages in the attempt to understand, to find an answer. But every time I think I've reached the floor, it falls out from beneath my feet. In my search for answers, I think I've learned more about my inner self than I have about the question. I want to become the person that has an answer to this question. Maybe not the right answer, or the most satisfactory, but the most true. A true question demands a true answer. I will know when I find it, if I ever do. There is a cyclical nature to the world. Events echo down through generations, and history repeats itself. I've seen things in my own family that I wouldn't believe if I hadn't experienced them firsthand. I feel a certain responsibility to document things that no one else will, because they're too ugly, too depraved, or because they cast a bad light on the dead. There is a tendency to sweep things under the rug, to forgive and forget. There are certain things I have only hints of, pieces of the truth that died along with their keepers. Like my grandfather, as he delivered his father's eulogy, unequivocally stating the man had been possessed by a demon that placed a curse on our family line. I will never know what my grandfather truly meant, what he had been through to make him so certain. But I know it was important, excruciating. I know it was a piece of the puzzle that made him who he was, made me who I am. A piece that I may never be able to name. A piece of the truth. Maybe I want to know these things, so that I can avoid repeating the tragedies of history. I'm painfully aware of my own capacity for evil, and I'm walking along the top of a narrow fence, like I did as a child. Only now I am much heavier, and the fence has grown old and rotted with age. My addictions are a testament to this. The only difference between me and someone who has lost everything is that I've been fortunate enough to not yet encounter the perfect antidote to my own particular manifestation of pain. My experience with alcohol was enough to make me recognize my own weakness, but it still took me years to begrudgingly acknowledge my lack of self-control. There is a particular metaphor that has stuck in my brain, and an expression that trails after. To break a butterfly upon the wheel. I have seen the face of God, and it was weeping. While I take these phrases out of context from their original bodies of work, these two short lines stand on their own like spears stabbed into the earth. There's a clear, self-contained message that demands to be seen, to be understood. If I had to summarize my childhood as succinctly as possible, it would read just so. I can't interpret them for you, because I don't even know myself exactly why they ring so true to me. But I recognize pieces of myself in them. things I can never forget or get back. Right now, I've come close enough to the mountains to realize that they are, in fact, impossibly large walls of water. And for some reason, I continue to paddle my small boat eastward, knowing that it could never withstand the waves before me, but unable to give up, because if I do, I will simply drown all the sooner. But what has driven me all this way? The search for my Eden, to find the great work of my life, to find the truth, and with it, to see the world anew, renewed, with the inherent wonder that a child sees in everything. My whole life, I have been seeking my secret purpose. What this purpose is, I may never know. It is a spirit that haunts my mind, a feeling more than a thought, a memory knot tied with the twined roots of a mountain. But sometimes, when I'm lost in the act of creation, I feel it on the edge of my awareness, like a word recently forgotten, waiting to spring sudden and complete past my lips. The story of my life is a story of trying to become the person who knows my purpose and lives in it. In my darkest moments, I fear I've passed it, gone too far east. I'm hardly a person, as it may be. I am a collection of impulses, piggybacking off one another, within the trench coat of a body named myself. It is in fact much like being the captain of a ship. There are many necessary functions occurring, several lackwits and slackers, clumsy oafish men with good intentions, and a true dyed-in-the-wool scoundrel or two trying to plan a mutiny, trying to sink the ship. I can chart a general course and attempt to steer the vessel roughly in that direction, but the currents might fight me, the wind might choose to blow against the bow, or I could be murdered in my sleep. I cannot control how long my voyage will be, or whether I will even arrive at my destination in one piece, but I will do my best to aim for what is true. And if the person who sets foot on that fateful shore is unrecognizable, well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? Thank you for watching.